over the period of time, in spite of the personal health challenges that Hadi Elis sir is facing, he has continued with a lot of courage, conviction, and specifically an indomitable spirit to connect with scholars like you and to tell them about who is a Kurd, why is it important to know about them, what are the challenges faced by them, why should there be awareness about it, and why the challenges which are faced by him and by others of the diaspora, this human suffering, the challenges of social, economic, political life need to be talked about. So with these words, Hadi Elis sir, I'm very, very thankful for you for coming today for the conference. And I would like to tell you that our scholars are at the age group of, 20 to 35. And they might not have a very clear idea on what exactly is the Kurdish identity. So in a very basic way, I would request you to start with the introduction and then, like you're teaching 5-year-olds, because I also, to be honest, do not know much. So thank you for the privilege of your time, sir. The floor is all yours now.
I thank you. And I thank all my friends who join it to listen. For me, as a personal issue, it's very important. And also for a Kurdish nation, which I believe over 60 million. And currently 4 nation states, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, occupied and partitioned Kurdish land and Kurdish population among themselves. Kurdish people before 11th century, they were known as Meds, M-E-D-E-S. It's also mentioned in Bible as Meds people. And many other ancient historical documents mentions them. But because Kurds did not have their own state, like today we call nation states, many of the archaeological, anthropological diggings, excavations, surveys, and artifacts were registered as Persians, Iranians, or Iraqi and Arabs, or for the Turkish ones. But many of those artifacts displayed in the museums actually belongs to Kurds. So it is very difficult to come up, let's say, a historical personality in, let's say, pre-Islam period, that he was Kurdish. The only guy known is Saladin the Kurd, who liberated Jerusalem from the Crusaders. He was Kurd, and he was king of the Kurdish dynasty called Ayyubids. Now, if you go back to Akkadian, Babylonian, Sumerian periods, they also mention Kurds, as Medes. So we kind of established the connections between Medes people and the Kurds. Now, the Medes are Indo-Aryan, related to Persians and Indians. So we call Indo-Aryan race. So Kurds are in between. We are related to the Indians and we related to Persians. I saw a study around 10 years ago. It says India and Kurdistan. So this gentleman who did a research, and he claimed the Kurds are actually emigrated from India. This is one of the theory, anthropological theory, but also there are other theories like the Turks says, the Turks are actually Kurdish and Turkish origin. After 1923, when Turkey became a nation state, liberated from Britain, Greece, Italy, France occupation, it was Ottoman Empire before World War I. Then they said everyone in Turkey is Turkish. There is no Kurdish people, there is no Kurdish language, there is no Kurdish music, there is no Kurdish anything. And then Iraqi state created by the Britain in 1936, and Syria created by French in 1932. And then there is international borders Turkish, Iranian, Iraqi, and Syrian, dividing Kurdistan officially. But the guy in the south of the Iraq and north of the Iraqi border in Turkey, they are belong to the same family, same tribe. Sometimes the younger brother stay in Iraq and older brothers stay in Turkey. This is in 1923, and they couldn't pass the borders. Everything was restricted. Everybody crossed the border, they got shot. So 12th to 13th century, Turks came from Central Asia before the Mongol invasion. And they fight with the Greeks, Byzantium Empire, Roman Empire, and they liberated Central Anatolia. Then it became several Turkish small kingdoms. One of them was the Ottoman Kingdom, and Ottoman Kingdom conquered all the neighbors, and they made around 1514, I believe, Ottoman Empire. Then they were big enough to fight with the Persian Empire, so they divided Kurdistan in two. Eastern Kurdistan with Iran, Iranian Safavid Empire, and Western Kurdistan was with Ottomans. And Western Kurdistan today is Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. And Eastern Kurdistan is still inside Iran today, is controlled by the Ayatollah regime. At early stage, when the Mongol invasion started, Kurds were still doing okay. But honestly, Mongol invasion to the Central Anatolia and Middle East was the biggest damage to the Kurdish civilization, biggest damage to the Kurdish national structure, that they can unite it under a tribal leader or someone with vision. Then that will have an evolution to today's Kurdish state. But Ottomans were very strong. They recognized Kurdistan as small kingdomships. Until 1900, there was 16 Kurdish, in Arabic called them emirate, the regional governors. And there was maybe another 9 to 12 in Iranian Kurdistan under the Persian Empire. Okay, now the most of the Kurdish books, historical records, artifacts, even archaeological sites were destroyed by the Mongol invasion. And Kurdistan still didn't recover from those damages. Then we come to the World War I, and Ottoman Empire chose a side supporting Germany. So Germany lost the war, and then Ottomans lost the war. This caused British, French, and Americans occupying Middle Eastern lands, most of the Arab lands. Then they were able to create Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, and others. And Kurds appealed at that time to the international peace conferences to say that we don't want to be part of Turkey, we don't want to be part of Iraq, and we want independent Kurdistan. But somehow Britain at that time fight with the local leaders in Iraqi Kurdistan and forcefully incorporated Iraqi Kurds into Iraq. Syrian Kurds, through French government, French mandate at the early years, forced to be part of Syria. And Ottomans, Kemal Atatürk, the guy who liberated Turkey, up to 1924, he was okay with the Kurds. He was saying that I will give Kurds autonomy. But after 1924, totally changed. And since then, Kurds became unhappy with the situation in Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, and Iran. And they start opposing some of those policies that totally disregard Kurds. The Kurdish armed struggle started in 1984, but from 1924 to 1984, in 60 years, Kurds were doing peaceful activism. They were intellectual activism, publishing magazines, books, joining political parties, trying to be a Kurdish voice in the Turkish parliament, but all failed. And because it was a Cold War, one side was USA, NATO, the other side was Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union. So many of those Kurdish groups naturally became anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist national liberation groups. But gradually they involved in international system. They incorporated to realize that independent Kurdish state will ask Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and Iran to give up their land because they have air force, they have chemical weapons, they have prisons that can hold hundreds of thousands of people. The Kurdish movement were not really successful. We need outside help. And outside help is America and NATO. And Turkey is already a member of NATO. So that was out of question. And all those NATO from 1954, when Turkey joined NATO, until now, they are supporting Turkey against Kurds. So independent Kurdish state was not as the main issue. Like Iranian Kurds said, we want democracy for Kurdistan. And Iraqi Kurds, they said, we want autonomy for Kurdistan. And then the Kurds in Turkey in 1984 started with Kurdistan Workers' Party. They say, no, we want to fight for independent Kurdistan. Until 1999, when Abdullah Öcalan, the Kurdish leader of the party, kidnapped in Kenya by American intelligence and given to Turkey, they were thinking that if they capture Abdullah Öcalan as a one-man mission, that who created PKK, organized Kurdish struggle to liberate from Turkey, that they will eliminate PKK. But it didn't work. Unfortunately, Al-Qaeda did 9/11 at that time. So the world were more focused on war on terrorism. And this really affected Kurds, that they can do diplomatic activities with Western countries, Europe, USA, Canada, Australia, and many others. But they all failed because focusing on war on terrorism, Afghanistan, Taliban, that today is still an issue for the Western governments, the Kurdish struggle disregarded as a secondary issue. But then the Arab Spring came, and during the Arab Spring, the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood wanted to overthrow Assad regime. And Turkey were doing peace talks with PKK in Oslo from 2008 to 2013, 5 years. But then they saw ISIS, radical Islamism, might fight Kurds in Iraq and Syria, and Turkey will benefit from this when they also attack PKK and other Kurdish national liberation forces. So Turkey directly involved with ISIS. It called ISIS Islamic State, but the state in ISIS is the Turkish state. ISIS is not a state. All the national intelligence, weaponry, logistics, medical services supplied from Turkey. And then this became an issue for the Western governments when they created the coalition and they asked Turkey to be part of it. But Turkey said no, because Kurds are there and they are fighting ISIS. Turkey decided to fight Kurds instead of fighting the ISIS. Then this created the tension with USA. Even last year in September, Turkey attacked American army in Syria and Iraq. USA is member of NATO and Turkey is member of NATO. But Turkey attacked American army because they were fighting with Kurds against ISIS. But ISIS is supposed to help Turkey to clear Turkish-Syrian border, no man's land, and they want to resettle Arabs to the area. It's called Arab Belt. Arab Belt is supposed to create a demilitarized Kurdish zone in 1960s by the Hafiz Assad, the father of Bashar Assad today. He named this area Arab Belt, and he wants to push the Kurds de-Kurdify the region and then settle with the Arabs. But didn't happen. He died, and then his son came to power. Syria and Turkey always had tension because there is a region called in Turkey, Hatay, Hatay, all called Antakya in old Antioch, in old Bible, Christian, Roman, Byzantium Empire records. That region is at the Mediterranean Sea. Syria still publishes maps that this region is part of Syria. And Turkey acquired that region in 1936 through a referendum. But, we know what kind of frauds happened during the elections and referendums. So Turkey acquired it by a referendum, and still it's in Turkey and governed by a provisional government. Turkey used to be 67 governorship. Today is 81, and Hatay is still one of those. And then this area is direct access to the Syria. When ISIS leadership came to Idlib, they were 5 kilometers from the Turkish border. So they were controlled and given intelligence, financed from Turkish border to ISIS. And ISIS leader al-Baghdadi was there. And then when Americans attacked and killed him, he wanted to run to Turkey. There are lots of videos published by the Turkish forces in Syria and Turkish civilians who joined ISIS in Syria in their Instagram, Facebook, and other Twitter accounts. What they did, they are beheading the Kurds. They are, going to Turkey for a couple of months and then going back to Syria to fight Kurds again. Many of them joined Syrian National Army. Many of them joined al-Nusra. But many of them, like according to Turkish statistics, 9,000 Turkish citizens joined ISIS. And some of those guys come back to Turkey and they publish their pictures with Erdogan, with Turkish ministers. I can show it to you because I printed them last night. The Turkish citizens, they are beheading Kurds in one picture, and they are right beside the Turkish Minister of Interior or Turkish Minister of National Defense or Erdogan himself taking pictures. So how come Turkish intelligence, Turkish military intelligence doesn't know that these guys were in Syria beheading Kurds, and now they are taking pictures with the Turkish ministers and president himself?